North Dakota. This is a Scribe's Journey with your host, Richard Polinelli.
We have a very special guest on today, and this is a show I've been looking forward to do for a very long time. It's an author that I read, and you're not that much older than me, but I read it for the first time in high school. So I don't want you to feel too old.
I'm a little bit older.
I checked 14 years. You're 14 years older than I am. Jeffrey Carver is on today, and we're going to talk to him about his career. And the one thing I want to ask him, and I'll do it probably pretty quickly, is how in the world do you keep writing after 4 decades? Well, we'll get into that here pretty soon. We're going to be talking about some of his recent work, which came out about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. Yeah. And we'll find out why. The last time Jeffrey and I talked at the same time on a podcast, he was in Cape Cod. And that clearly is not Cape Cod in the background. So we're going to find out what Jeffrey's up to in Puerto Rico, which is where he's joining us from today. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's good to see you, and glad to be on.
It looks like the internet connection is a little bit better than Cape Cod, too.
Isn't that odd? Actually, the internet connection has been very spotty here, but today it seems to be working.
Well, we'll take that blessing as it comes. I just remember when you were on the show, the other podcast, you would be talking, all of a sudden you'd freeze and then black out, and you come back a couple of minutes later. So I'm hoping that won't happen today.
Well, I was at a campsite for that one. Here it feels like a campsite because our water is out and the electricity has been flickering on and off periodically. Yeah. If we actually do have a power outage, I'll try to switch over to my phone or something. So,
for those who are wondering, Jeffrey has set aside the typewriter for a while, and he's playing Fixer Upper down in Puerto Rico. And I've been following on his website. He's had quite the adventure getting his house worked on.
Yeah, I'd show you, but when I tested my webcam washes out as soon as I try. There's actually behind me, there is a gorgeous view of the city of Ponce, Puerto Rico, and the coastline, and an island offshore, and the pool that I'm rebuilding the deck around, and all that. None of which would show up on the camera when I turn to look at it. But anyway,
it seems like the perfect setting to get writing done, and there you are unable to get any writing done.
Yeah, that is in fact the case.
Okay, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Jeffrey has been writing for, I think your first book came out in '76. If I'm remembering the show prep.
76.
45 years. How in the world have you managed to be creative over that great distance of time?
It's not always easy, to be honest, and I don't write as slowly as I did in the early days. Well, I was never a fast writer. My agent used to gripe at me for taking so long to finish books, but now he's just thrown up his hands and given up. But it can be a challenge, and as you get older and you have more things going on in your life, and family and kids and home ownership, that stuff can really crowd out your creativity. So from time to time, I just have to get away. And when we last spoke, I was doing exactly that. I had gotten away for a writing retreat. And now I'm on what I guess I could call an anti-writing retreat. Although I feel as if I'm rehearsing Heinlein's formula for the competent man who can do just about anything. I can feel as if I'm doing just about everything here in a passively competent way. So I have a ways to go to achieve the status of Heinlein's competent man. But
well, you're just picking up the check of the writing retreat earlier this year. Now you're having to do some other work, and that's kind of the challenge, though, for every writer, is navigating through day-to-day life and still finding the time to sit down and get writing in.
And it really does take some concentrated time to keep your mind on the story and do that. So I'm certainly not alone in facing this challenge. Most of my writing friends struggle with it one way or another. But as we get a little bit older, things seem a little bit less urgent, and so it takes a little longer to write a book. Well, that's life. Life happens.
Well, you cranked out 2 in 2019, and the one title
I have to laugh at you saying I cranked out.
Well, that's when they came out. I don't know when you wrote them, but that's when they came out. We'll do that.
That was actually written as a single novel that took 11 years to write, and it was enormous when it was finished, and I broke it into 2 books, just for practicality, and that was The Reefs of Time and Crucible of Time, and they were books 5 and 6 of the Chaos Chronicles, but they're really a single story told over 2 volumes.
Well, at least you broke them up. I mean, I'm on the writer's block with Jim Christina every week, and we had an author on, and our deal is you send us your book, and we will read the entire book, and then talk to you about your book for that entire hour. Well, this guy wrote a book, and he published it at 832 pages. And I could see as we were reading, okay, this was the end of book 1, and this was the end of book 2, and this would have been the end of book 3. Why didn't you break these up? Because 832, that's a monster book to try to get in 1 week. So I'm glad you broke it up in 2, because
it was 2 pretty long books, I have to say. And because it was really conceived as a single story, it didn't have that progression that you described in this other person's book. I just basically found a place where I said, okay, stop, and restart. But I made it, try to make it clear to all comers that they had to read parts 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Although, interestingly, some reviewers read only part 2 or part 1, and nobody complained about it only being half a story, which puzzled the heck out of me.
Well, see, you picked the right spot then to make the cut.
I guess so.
But we'll go with that. That's your story, and you'll stick to it, right?
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned it took 11 years to write those 2.
Yeah.
And I guess I was kind of surprised it took you that long, because I have found, and I've only been writing for, I'm looking at the calendar, 7 years now. I've found that I can get a book written faster and faster with each passing book. So was what took the 11 years? Was it just because?
Well, I don't know. Partially it was life, a lot of things happening. I guess I'd have to say that I was struggling with writer's block during part of that, where I just was having trouble finding the story, and went down a lot of dead ends and had to back up and find other ways around.
Yeah.
When I finished the first draft of it after many, many years, I had a picture of me sort of leaning on it was a manuscript pile about this high on my dining room table. And when I set about to do the first cut, I just read through that with 3 highlighters in my hand. Green to mark stuff that was good, yellow to mark stuff that, well, there's something in here to keep, and red, cut. And I probably cut a full third or maybe half of the wordage, and then replaced it with other words. Actually, they're mostly the same words, but in a different order. And by the second draft, the story was much more coherent to me, and the dead ends had been eliminated, and I could see my path. By the third time through, I was really beginning to understand what the story was and where the slow parts were, and where it needed to be beefed up a little bit, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with taking that amount of time. I had a 2-year gap between book releases. And everybody during that 2 years is like, when are you going to release your next book? It's like, well, when life gets out of the way enough that I can write the next book. There was our publishing company had picked up an 11-book anthology series, and I was ramrodding the whole show. That takes time and energy away. You've got other life issues. So, I don't know if it's so much writer's block as life block in a way. Life.
It's hard to tell the difference sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes you've got the ideas, you just don't have the time to do anything with them. And then once you do, that's when you start getting busy. Now you and I were talking before we went live. You've been doing some work on audiobook adaptations as well.
Yes. But prior to a few years ago, a number of my books have been available in Audible, and it was just sort of a standard thing that my agent sold the rights, and they hired narrators, and some of them were good, and some of them were maybe not as good. And that the group of books that had been licensed to Audible actually didn't include my best known books. It didn't include the Chaos Chronicles or my Star Rigger book, Eternity's End, which was the anchor book of that series, just for various reasons. So I had, I'd been aware of ACX and Findaway and these services that help you to record your books or get them recorded by a narrator and get them out. But I really wanted high quality narration. I listen to audiobooks myself all the time, and I really love audiobooks. And I've learned that a really good narrator can just absolutely make a book. And bad narrator can destroy the best book. So I actually, just on an off chance, I sent an email to Stefan Rudnicki, who's a narrator who does a lot of science fiction. He does a lot of Orson Scott Card's books and Ben Bova's plays, Harlan Ellison. He's done a ton of great work, and he has a really deep, I think James Earl Jones, but maybe a little bit deeper, and wonderful reader. And I wrote to him. I asked if he'd be interested, and he looked at Neptune Crossing and said, "Yeah, let me see if I can work out an arrangement with Blackstone," who he works with a lot, where we did sort of a standard publishing arrangement for that. They didn't want to continue the series, so I was faced with, do I let these books not be available in audiobook while audiobooks become increasingly important in the publishing marketplace? Do I record them with a narrator I'm only kind of okay with? Or do I bite the bullet and spend my money to pay a narrator to narrate the books and then put them up, and then from there on, all the royalties are mine? So I felt confident that if I was able to front the money, that in time they would earn out and I would get the money back, and it could be a source of new readers, listeners, as well as income. So that's what I did. I was fortunate that some funds became available that I could use for that. So I hired Stefan to do all of the Chaos Chronicles and Eternity's End, and they were released over, I guess, the last year and a half. I think I forget exactly when the first ones came out. It's kind of a blur, and it took a little while for them to get traction, and then they started to really pick up readers. So I think it's going to take me less time to earn the money back than I thought, which is great. But more importantly, I have books, audiobook versions of these novels that I'm really very proud and happy with. And it was sort of a collaborative effort between Stefan and me. I didn't just hand him the book and say, "Here, do it." I gave him a long set of pronunciations of alien names and all of funny words. And there were places where on the first take, his interpretation maybe wasn't quite what I was looking for. So I would call him up and we'd talk about it. And sometimes he would persuade me that he was right. And sometimes I would persuade him that it really should be different. And so we really did work together on trying to come up with the best books we could. So that's been a real high point for me to have those books in the audio.
My name is Detective Tommy Nolan, and I am a saint.
Yeah, audiobooks seem to be very, very, very popular. Uh, in fact, I think I've got one audiobook that has outsold the book, which is stunning to me, but I'm not going to complain. Royalties are royalties. But I didn't expect that. I didn't think the audiobook would outdo a printed or even an ebook, and this one is. So
Prior to this, my audiobooks really hadn't been selling very well at all. So I think it, and also I did, I've been doing a lot of promotion of my ebooks via BookBub, and I did a couple of Chirp promotions of the audiobooks. Chirp is BookBub's audiobook sibling, as it were. And that worked out really well. That picked up a lot of new readers, and a lot of people went ahead and bought. A lot of new readers buying a book at a discount, or even several books at a discount, and then going on to buy others.
yeah.
So it was a good way to introduce my books to new listeners.
Now, see here, you are a traditionally published author, and yet you're still going out and you're doing, your own audiobooks. You're doing your own promotions too, aren't you? I mean, from what I'm hearing.
I was traditionally published.
Okay.
All of my books up through the fourth book of the Chaos Chronicles were published traditionally by Tor and Bantam and Dell and other New York publishers. My relationship with Tor ended with the recent books, with the Reefs of Time, and I indie published those. And my entire backlist is now in my hands. So, except for a couple of collaborative things, but so in effect, I'm now an indie author with traditional background, I guess you would say. And I'm not writing off traditional publishing forever, but for right now, indie publishing is working better for me than traditional ever did.
See, and that to me is an indication of how far indie publishing has come, because I started off traditional, and after 2 years, I kind of looked at everything. I'm like, I'm paying all these people to publish the book, and yet I'm still going out and having to do all this stuff, doing all the heavy lifting as far as marketing, and they're getting all the money. What am I doing? So I switched to indie, and I'm kind of thrilled that a person who has the traditional background that you have has also kind of jumped into the indie pool and tried it out, and it's working. It sounds like you're happy with what it's doing.
I mean, it's not. It's not for everyone, and there are upsides and there are downsides to it.
Yeah.
When I brought out the Reefs of Time and Crucible of Time, I had published my backlist as ebooks, and I knew how to do that. I had been a part of an author collaborative for a number of years that sort of helped, and I had people I worked with to do cover design and that sort of thing. But I have to say that when I brought out brand new books, and I was determined to do them not just in ebook, but in print. I did softcover, hardcover, and audiobook. That the amount of work that went into doing that was far exceeded what I had imagined, sort of like home repair.
Yeah. As you're finding out, right?
It's quite a learning curve to doing all this stuff, and it is harder to promote yourself as a purely indie author than it's harder to promote your print books. Ebooks, I think an indie author can promote as well as, if not better than, a traditional publisher. Print books are a different story, because it's really hard to get your books into the stores. And of course, the pandemic took care of stores for a while anyway, but it is much more digital-oriented publishing. Yeah. So my books are available. I brought a fair number of my previous books into print versions, and I take a lot of care to do that, to make them look really professional. At the same time, I know I'm not actually selling a lot of copies of these, because maybe most of the science fiction audience, or most of my audience, in any case, seems to be going for ebooks rather than print.
And the thing with print is, if you go through Amazon when you upload your ebook and you do the print version, you can price it to where it's affordable. But if you go for, say, any other outside unit, I use Lulu only because I like the quality, and I'm trying to kind of get away from Amazon a little if I can. And they do paperback and they do hardcover, and they've done that for a while. And Amazon's now starting to get into hardcover, but they're not allowing everybody to get in on it. The problem is with the outside sources, you have to price your book so high to get it into Barnes and Noble or into a brick and mortar that people are not going to pay that price for that book. So you can lower the price and still offer print and hardcover, but they have to do print on demand. People have to order it, then it's printed and shipped. You can't get it to where a bookstore will go and say, okay, we'll order 20 copies, because then they don't have an outlet to get it back if they don't sell. Yeah. So that's where.
Yeah. I'm doing mine all print on demand. I use Amazon and Ingram. So Amazon, strictly Amazon sales, and Ingram for everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's not that's sometimes a rocky road getting your books into their system.
Yeah.
But they do very nice hardcovers as well as print editions. And so that's how my books are available. They're available now here's a thing that I really have not cracked the core of. Libraries can buy my books through Ingram with no problem at all. But getting libraries to buy your books is another challenge, and that's something that I think, I don't know if it's if they're more accustomed to ordering through the traditional publishing stream, or they look to the sort of standard review outlets like Publishers Weekly and Library Journal and Kirkus and all that. And those are, it's not impossible for an indie author to get into those review outlets, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so I know that some of my books have made it into the library. Some of my books, indie books, that is. My traditional books, it wasn't so much an issue, but now that's something. If you find a way to do that, let me know, because.
Well, I've actually contacted my hometown library and the library where I live now, and told them, hey, I'm a local, or I lived there, I was born there. I have a catalog of books. I can arrange to, get them to you at a price that's not going to break the bank if you're interested. We'll see. And it may be that's the way to do it, is to go directly to the libraries and give them your catalog of what you got and see if they're interested. And then, here's what you can buy them from me directly. And go that way. I don't know if it works. I'll let you know.
Yeah. But the thing is, how many libraries can you go to and do that?
You know what? I am kind of the marketing arm of Tuscany Bay Books. So there is no low I won't sink to try to sell a book. And I don't know if that's something I should be admitting or not, but I will try anything and everything until I find something that works. So, you know what, Jeffrey, this 30 minutes went racing by. We're almost out of time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you to let folks know how they can get a hold of you online, where they can go. I know you have a blog where you are chronicling your adventures in home repair. So if you could let us know where that is.
That's at starrigger.net. Well, really, the easiest thing is to type my name into a search engine, and that's what will come up, is starrigger.net. That's my website, the home of my blog. And I'm also on Facebook. I'm not very active on Facebook, but my blog does get reposted to Facebook, so you can read it there too, if that's a more convenient platform. And if you want to get in touch with me, I have an email contact form on my website. Although I love hearing from readers, I do not so much love hearing from people trying to sell me things via my contact form. I'm easy to find if you want to, and I love to hear from people who have read my books.
Well, we didn't get a chance to touch on it, but the Star Rigger series was the first one I was introduced to back in 1980. So if you get a chance to read that series or anything that Jeffrey has written, trust me, it is worth the time and money invested. You will not feel shortchanged. Jeffrey, thank you for coming on. We're going to have to. Well, I wish we could go longer, but unfortunately, there's a time limit on how long we can record, and here we are. So you enjoy the home repair out there in Puerto Rico, and don't do what you did the other day. I've been reading the blog. Yeah, bend the knees. Bend the knees.
I'm going to try not to do that again.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. You have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.
This has been a Scribe's Journey with your host, Richard Paulinelli, a Tuscany Bay Productions presentation.